Hey everybody, hope that you're doing well. Here's some announcements to start off the class. Be sure to get your shitty first draft or your outline submitted. That's your homework for today, due on the discussion board. I noticed that I only have a couple as of right now in each class, and I think that may be because of our weird schedule with the recalibration period. So I posted a lecture video last Thursday, and basically, I just want you to have a little bit of your paper, whether you're more of a shitty first draft or an outliner, done so that you get the ball rolling. So for today, that very beginning part of the paper, and then for next week, what I want you guys to do is have a rough draft that you feel good about that you are going to post for peer review. So that's all to say that everything we're doing in class right now is in order to help you work on this call to action paper. We're just doing it in little bits as we go. So if you need an extension to get this homework for today done, let me know, that's fine. But my advice, if you are working through it, is to just get what you can done today and then move on to the next step after you watch this video. All right, email me if you have questions. The second announcement is that more than 3 sources is fine for this paper. Feel free to add more after you finish the annotated bibliography. So you guys did that annotated bibliography, and I hope that you used the sources that you found as the foundation for the paper. But if you find that you need more in order to build your argument, or you feel like something's missing, you need more support, definitely go back and find more sources. Just make sure that they're credible and that you feel like that person is an expert who's been fact-checked when you find the sources for your paper. All right, but more than 3 is fine. Any questions that you have about the announcements or the pace of the class or whatever, email me. I'm always happy to talk. Objectives for today, we're going to review the common elements of opinion pieces and research papers. Remember that for this paper, you have to pick one or the other. You don't want to fuse the common elements of the genres. You want to pick one genre and follow its common elements. So I'm going to talk about MLA style and also talk about hyperlinks for sources for opinion pieces. So last week I got into some of the basics of common elements. Today I'm getting more into the specific details about how to format your paper within the genre that you choose. Okay, so this is a slide from the video that I made for last Thursday. If you haven't gotten to watch that video yet, I recommend going back, watching the week 10 video, because it gives a little bit more information about, what do you do with your sources once you find them. And for this chart, I went into each of the samples that we read and showed you the things that are in the bullet points. So watch that week 10 video first, and then come back and watch the week 11 video, but I just felt like this slide from last week bears repeating. So I'll start on the left side with MLA research papers. First of all, MLA research papers should have a thesis at the end of the first paragraph. What is your solution to the issue? Right? So the thesis is the foundation for the whole paper. It's the bottom line. So if you give your solution at the end of the first paragraph, then everything in those body paragraphs relates back to that solution. It has longer body paragraphs, especially compared to the opinion pieces or the profiles that we read. Body paragraphs use direct quotes and MLA in-text citations, and they say, I say in body paragraphs. They say, I say is a really useful tool in academic writing, meaning that the they say is what the source says, and then I say is what you have to say about the source. So after every quote that you use, you want to say something about how that quote relates back to your main idea. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Do you want to add more? How does it relate to what you're talking about? All right, so if you're writing a research paper, thinking with every quote that you use about they say, I say will be a useful way to follow the common elements of research papers. Opinion pieces on the right side do not have a thesis. Generally, it lays out the issue and then the solution. So the structure is more linear. It's problem, explain the problem, give some background, and then explain the solution. They use shorter body paragraphs, and they use short summary of sources with hyperlinks. So I'll explain more about hyperlinks later in the video, but depending on which genre you choose, this chart is going to show you sort of the main common elements that I'm looking for. Okay, MLA style for research papers. I'm going to go through the slide first, and then I'm going to point these things out to you in the sample research paper that we read in class. So MLA papers have Times New Roman font, 12-point font, and they're double spaced always. So you want to make sure you have that in your paper. They use an MLA heading, which I'll point out, and the structure is specific, right? So you have an introduction that grabs the reader's attention, that sort of sets up this community and issue, with a thesis sentence. So the last sentence of the first paragraph is the foundation of the paper. It's your bottom line. It's your suggestion for how to solve this problem. Then after that, the body paragraphs, you have body paragraphs that support the thesis and include evidence, mostly direct quotes from sources. The conclusion, which sort of talks about why does this matter, why should we care, and then you have a final page that's your works cited. And then the final bullet point, the most important thing is that any information you use from a source is cited with both an in-text citation and a works cited page citation. So MLA is really all about showing your sources. And if you use someone else's ideas, you want to show where in the paper you're using someone else's ideas with an in-text citation, and then you want the reader to be able to scroll to the bottom of the paper and see the full citation so that they, if they want to, can go find that source themselves and read it and look up the information. That's the whole point of MLA, is where are your sources coming from and how can your reader find them if they want to. So I'm going to go point these things out in the sample paper. Okay, so this is a rough ride. No one seems to care how you get there. So MLA important things we can see here, the MLA heading, name, professor's name, class, date it's due. Other important things to think about is the title and the page number with your last name. In order to do this in Word, you just click up into the header like this, and then you do page number, which is up here, okay? And then you add in your last name. So that's something to think about with MLA. The other things that are important are, let's see. Let me point out the structure for you guys. So for this paper, they had the introduction that sort of introduces this community, which is CUNY students, the issue, which is the cost, and they also draw our attention in with an interesting introduction, right? And then they have this thesis at the end of the first paragraph. Therefore, these students should receive free Metro cards as long as they maintain good grades. So everything in the paper goes back to that suggestion, and they develop the suggestion more throughout the paper, but the bottom line is this last sentence of the first paragraph. Then we have the body paragraphs that include mostly direct quotes, but you'll also see in this paper that there's some paraphrasing and summary as well, and that's just fine. Let me find a good example of a quote. I pointed this one out last week when I talked about they say, I say, but I'll show you guys again. So we have the in-text citation where we introduce the author, the work, and the quote, right? So this sentence, they say, Dr. Myers, the author of Exploring Psychology, states, biologically speaking, life's purpose is not happiness, but survival and reproduction. So they tell us who this person is. It's especially useful to introduce the author of your source the first time that you're including them, especially so that the reader gets a sense of who they are. Imagine if you're having an in-person conversation and someone new just jumps in and starts talking without introducing themselves, you'd feel confused, right? So you want to introduce your source, include the quote, and then if there's a page number, include the page number in the in-text citation, right? And that's what the body paragraphs are doing throughout. They're including these sources, and then they have they say, I say, where whenever they use a source, they relate it back to the main idea. So for this student, it's that students need free Metro cards. Now we have this author Myers, right? So say that I'm reading this paper and I want to know more about Dr. Myers. I maybe want to go look up this textbook that the student is talking about. So I scroll down to the end of the paper with their works cited page. Works cited page, you have the title Works Cited centered at the top, and then you list your sources alphabetically by either their last name, or if there's no last name for the source, you start with the first word of the page. So for example here, CUNY Value Fact Sheet 2012, that didn't have an author, so this student listed the name of the page, which is the correct way to cite it. Okay, so I'm seeing this, it's alphabetically listed, and then I see, David Myers, right? So now I see the relationship between the in-text citation and the works cited citation. That's the most important thing. If you want resources for MLA, like I've said before, I don't think that anyone should memorize MLA. Go to the Purdue OWL, which is the Writing Center for Purdue University. And they have a lot of great information about MLA. So I don't think that anyone should memorize this, and there's also really specific ways that you cite, like a YouTube video versus a scholarly journal article, right? So the most important thing you can do is go here, and if you're using it to build your works cited page, probably the most useful thing for you guys is the electronic sources page. And that's going to give you information about how to build citations. So say I have a page on a website. I'm scrolling. They have things like a tweet, a YouTube video. Where's a page on a website? Here we go, a page on a website, right? So if this is what I'm looking for, then I can use this model to make my citation. Cool. One more important thing to note about the work page is that it's indented the opposite of paragraphs. So the first line is totally left aligned, and then every line after that is indented. So keep that in mind for MLA. Let's see. Now, an opinion piece is single-spaced using the font of your choice, and it often includes pictures. Structure-wise, there's no thesis. It starts with the problem, explains it, develops it, and then explains the proposed solution. And the most important thing is that you include your sources using hyperlinks. So let me show you guys the sample. So we read this opinion piece, right? So they have their title, they have a picture of all these people waiting for the subway, and then they jump right into saying the problem. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority is in a state of crisis. They don't really explain their solution until we get towards the end of the article. Starting here, the first step towards reforming the transportation system is to restore the independence of the MTA management. So that's the organization that you can follow. In terms of citing their sources, they're not using MLA, they're using hyperlinks, right? So this here is a link to a source. In the paper version that you guys had, it was just underlined. But when you write your own opinion piece, what you want to do is use hyperlinks as well. So I made a little sample here in Word, imagining that I'm a student writing a paper, an opinion piece, using the article that we read as a source. So I wrote, it's clear that the MTA needs to make changes. Richard Ravitch suggests that the MTA needs to be independent from the governor. This is a good start, but more measures need to be taken. The state budget needs to include far more money for the MTA. So I want to show my source here so that my reader can read this article if they want to. So I'm going to highlight this, my short summary of my source. I'm going to click, I did control click, and then hyperlink. And here's where I can put in the address for the article. So let me go back and grab it. Where is it? Okay, so I'm gonna copy it. I'm gonna paste it. Bam, now I have a hyperlink. So that's how you do it in Word. If you're doing this in Google Docs, here's the same information in Google Docs. So I highlight what I want to turn into a hyperlink, and then I have this little button right here that says Insert Link. I'm gonna paste, click Apply, and now that's a hyperlink. So if you're doing an opinion piece, hyperlinks are key. Okay, next steps. For next week, I want you to post a rough draft of your call to action paper on the discussion board for peer review. So make sure that you feel pretty good about this draft and you feel like it's ready to get some feedback. So it should be a pretty advanced draft. And don't forget that genre analysis paragraph. So you're not just writing the paper itself, but you're analyzing your own work using those words from the Bedford Book of Genres: purpose, audience, rhetorical appeals, etc. Feel free to look back at the assignment sheet as you're doing this. In fact, I encourage you to. That's under content. Email me if you have questions, but the big thing I want you guys to do is just be working on this paper, work on the rough draft. I wanted to have 2 discussion boards per week, but because of the recalibration period and because you guys have shortened spring break this week, we're just going to do 1 discussion board, which is that next week you guys are going to post your rough draft. Okay, so over the course of the week, just make sure you watch this video and that you post your rough draft when you have it ready, and that's that.